Hi, this is Pamela Worth with the Encourage Your Wellness podcast. And today I'm so excited to have Jodi Scott, who is a visionary force in the health and wellness space with a master's degree in health psychology and a background in pre-med and a specialization in the captivating field of psychoneuroimmunology, which is awesome because of the deep dive that I had done previously with inflammation on the brain and neurology and all the wonderful things that go along with all of that. She has been in the transformative power of medicinal plants and is currently the CEO and co-founder of Spry Life in a remarkable partnership with her sister, certified herbalist, midwife, and her mother, a graphic designer, and also one of the founders of Green Goo First Aid, Southern Butter Intimates, and groundbreaking Good Goo CBD line. So welcome and thank you for being here.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here with you.
So you've done so much. Tell us kind of what you've learned in your health and wellness journey that's been really impactful and where you're going now, kind of what your
That's a,
focus is.
it's a great question because you just never stop learning, right? About your overall health and wellness and so forth. So, for us, my mom, sister, and I started Green Goo together. And very specifically, having a master's in health psychology, at the time I was training resident physicians on the biopsychosocial model. And so at the time, there was no integrative medicine. I was in the first master's health psychology program. And there wasn't an education forum in med school to really look at the patient in this holistic fashion. And so, my job was to help them look at the patient and say, hey, what else can we be doing to serve the patient so that when we give them this medication, we are also thinking of other barriers or opportunities to help them really be successful in their wellness journey. At the time, my sister was studying to be an herbalist and a midwife. And we made this really interesting observation. We lived a fairly clean, sustainable lifestyle. We were living in the Austin area. First Whole Foods had opened up. We worked in health food stores in college. So we were always really passionate about natural foods. But when you looked at our first aid cabinet, that was the exception to the rule. We had all these chemical laden one time use products, plastics being thrown into the landfill. And we were like, why do we have these products in our house? Then we started to look into it further and we were fascinated that we weren't alone. So the natural consumer was willing to abandon their natural ethos because they were told that the chemical products like Neosporin, hydrocortisone, calamine were the only products that could get the job done. And then the conventional consumer was like, I really don't care what the ingredients are. I'm just frustrated with the efficacy and I'm looking for higher performing products. And what we recognized is that in the first aid space, they were only accommodating to acute skin conditions. And yet, most people suffer from chronic skin conditions. And these medications are saying use for 5 to 7 days. If symptoms persist, discontinue because it could lead to toxicity and go see the doctor. And so we thought, can we make plant-based solutions that are superior in efficacy and also are natural, sustainable, and have a little personality because, OTC just needed that. And so Green Goo was born. And the journey's just been really exciting. I mean, obviously the plant-based renaissance is here today, which is wonderful. When we started this, if you said that, I would talk to a buyer at a pharmacy and say, I've got a plant-based Neosporin, and they'd look at me like, yeah, right. But I think, fast forward, we're in this era where there's more science, there's more data, there's more support to demonstrate that some of these alternative modalities can actually work. And through that journey, learning about holistic skincare and the relationship that our largest organ has with our own immune system and nervous system and endocrine system has been really exciting and very full circle for me, coming from the health psychology and the psychoneuroimmunology background.
Okay, awesome. So I want to touch first on the first aid and then I want to talk about skincare. So with first aid, what are some of your favorite products? What types of plants are really getting the job done? I don't know that many people have really thought about plant-based first aid.
Yeah. Well, no, I'll say this too. One of the reasons that Green Goo works the way that it does is not just with the ingredients that we choose, but it's also the process by which we make these products. So we're not getting pre-made extracts that are already being made in other manufacturing facilities and then combining that. We actually bring the plants to our manufacturing facility, yield the highest amounts of the medicinal properties from the plants, and then put these custom oils into all of these products. So you're getting a high concentration of these plants with plant-based oils that are these beautiful transporters that your skin loves to absorb. And then they're custom blends. And I like to call it sort of the entourage effect, because how these plants work by themselves and then how they work together is really important. So, our flagship product is our Green Goo First Aid product. This was originally designed to be a natural neosporin antiseptic. But in the spirit of simplifying everyone's first aid closet, what we recognize is that people were looking for other symptom relief. And so instead, they had, 10 different products to serve 10 different things. So we decided to make it your first aid kit on the go. So you could actually have your first aid kit with you everywhere you go in this small little tin or small little stick. So it is for cuts and scrapes, but then you can use it for bug bites, bee stings. You could even use it for poison ivy, blisters, chafing, sunburn, chapped lips, and it takes the sting and the itch out, slows down the bleeding, and speeds up the healing. This particular product has 11 herbs in it that work together, plus essential oils. Calendula flower is one of our favorites. It is probably in most of our products. It's such a gift. It's such a gift. It has antifungal, anti-yeast, antimicrobial properties. It's also incredibly hydrating. It has natural sun protection. And more recently, we've also been able to identify that it is a plant stem cell. And so it has a lot of regenerative antioxidant properties that works well at the wound site and really penetrates the epidermis to have what we're now identifying stimulating other enzymes in our epidermis that helps with sort of systemic longevity, which is really exciting to learn that these plants have even more to give than sort of on the surface. Plantain and yarrow, two great plants in this product. Plantain being nature's Band-Aid, and yarrow also helping with the anti-itch and increasing oxygen to the wound site. So the two of them work really well together from a wound care standpoint. This product is probably the one that we're most known for. We have military taking it out on deployments with them. We have nonprofits that have used it in a remote emergency medical care practices because it's great and it's tiny and it can go with you everywhere you go. And we always hear from people, I never knew I needed or wanted portable first aid. And then when you have it with you, it's so incredibly convenient. I mean, most of these things aren't going to send you to the emergency room, although we have plenty of those stories of people getting, massive wounds out in the backcountry because maybe they're hiking or they're cycling. And they're able, because it's a coagulant, being able to put the green goo in there, slow down the bleeding, and then be able to get to the hospital where they then get, 10, 15 stitches. But most of the time, it's the things that are just making us uncomfortable because they itch or they sting. And the kiddos love this one because they can put it on themselves. My daughter, when she was little, she would call it goo goo for her boo boo, which was really sweet. And they feel the difference, right? Because you feel it taking the sting and the itch out. So that's probably our most known product. I personally love our repair product. I live in Colorado, and the air is so dry here, and so the repair product was meant to be a burn and scar product, but it's a wonderful anti-aging lotion. So we call it Butter Up here, or Salve Up, and you just put this salve on the repair from head to toe. Put your bathrobe on, let your skin just absorb it. And it's amazing. And what I find is when I would use regular lotions here in Colorado, it's almost like an hour later, my skin was dry again. And I'll say with Green Goo, it probably goes against traditional capitalism because the more you use it, the less you need it because your skin just loves it and soaks it up and then becomes hydrated. And so when your skin is happy, it doesn't need as much. And I'll call out one more product. And this product really is what put us on the map in the sense of when we were having a difficult time trying to find a manufacturer who was up for going through this extraction process and scaling this. And it took someone whose son had eczema who tried our product, came back to us a week later and said, I don't know how we're going to scale this, but your dry skin formula, the world needs this product. And John Hopkins has been using that in their scleroderma and skin condition department now for over a decade.
That's awesome. So you have the first aid and then you've got skincare. Uh, is the skincare separated between, like the typical skincare that you find in
Mhm.
stores between the face and the body? Or do you find that really one type of lotion really does work for the entire body and it's really just been more of a marketing?
You bring that's such an interesting question because we started in the first aid space and we looked very much at the legacy first aid products, whether it was a Vicks vapor rub or a calamine or an Abreva, and making a plant-based alternative to those products. And what we found oftentimes is, to your point, in the beauty care, most people were with chronic skin conditions were going into the beauty care section looking for things for their eczema or their burns and scars and that sort of stuff. And so we're finding that Green Goo is finding its way into the beauty category. And so since then, we've started to expand on that product line. So for example, we have the dry skin formula that is designed for eczema. Well, now we have a whole like plants for your face, eczema oil, acne stick, anti-aging that now we can put into the beauty care space. I do think that first aid and beauty should be more intertwined because, to your point, they really do work hand in hand together. Chronic skin conditions are at an all-time high, and people are looking for topical therapeutics that not only service them for these symptoms, but also provide added benefits, whether it is anti-aging or hydration. And so I've found for me personally that I use Green Goo for both my first aid and my everyday beauty care.
Yeah. So what are some of your favorite plants? You've mentioned a few. Are there any others that are just really a go-to? I mean, and even outside of what you're doing from a topical standpoint internally, I mean, are you following a certain diet? Do you prefer certain supplements? Do you find that some of those types of supplements you would typically take, you can put into a topical and those are absorbed, or anything in particular kind of along those lines?
Well, I'll tell you a fun story about our deodorant, and then I can get into kind of the holistic skincare approach. So we're always looking at the transdermal absorption of how these products can work systemically. And it really took a customer, she was Jane Doe number one, who used our pain relief product, who she was Jane Doe number one pulled from the World Trade Center. And our pain relief product was the only product that would help her through her opioid withdrawal. And so she was asking for it in larger volumes. And we developed this relationship. And I was able to better understand how this systemic, like these herbs, because there's such a high concentration, how they could serve her from a systemic standpoint. Because here it was a topical analgesic, but it could have, other purposes for her. In general, plants yeah, there's so much beauty in how they work together. And so looking at the transdermal absorption, your armpit is this very unusual skin. It has a 70% absorption rate. And when you look at it, it's different. And of course, we've only talked about with deodorants what not to have in it. And of course, there's a lot more of what you shouldn't have besides the aluminum, the parabens and the phthalates and all the other endocrine disruptors. But it's also an opportunity of how you could absorb other nutrients through your skin. So our deodorants have ashwagandha, holy basil, reishi mushroom, ginkgo biloba, vitamin C, echinacea, and looking at it from like adaptogens, immune boosters, ones that help clear your mind depending on what your goal is. And then adding essential oils, they can also have a systemic positive aromatic reaction in terms of opening up your mind or relaxing you in different capacities. We have a term in our home, and my daughter's 12, and she is often being inundated with all kinds of beauty care products or food or sugar, and so we try to simplify this notion of this holistic skincare approach. And so we have an acronym called SHAMAN. And so, to answer your question, these are little tips to help us make good decisions throughout the day. So S is sleep. And so I always remind her, add to your sleep bank. If you're going to go have your sleepover, remember that you're going to need to make up for that, because sleep is just so vital to our overall, mental health and physical wellness. H is hydration. And so she's reminded, especially in Colorado, to drink more water, but also thinking about what you're choosing to hydrate with, because there's all these sugary drinks that you need to be thinking about, but also your products in your food. There are skincare products that have hydration in them. Aloe vera, another wonderful plant that I love, can be so incredibly hydrating. Foods, vegetables, fruits, they have hydration with them. And then A is antioxidants. So thinking about antioxidants on what you can take in, but then also from your body care products. I mean, your skin is your largest organ. Again, another opportunity for you to be bringing in those different antioxidant properties. M is mindfulness. We are seeing more and more studies now. The Journal of Dermatology partnering with the Journal of Behavioral Medicine and seeing that mindfulness can have a significant impact on eczema flare-ups and improving wound care. So from a skincare perspective, but then also for your overall just mindset and peace of mind, practicing different kinds of mindfulness activities throughout the day, even as simple as gratitude. Gratitude is a perfect example of an easy way to practice mindfulness. You don't need to sit and meditate for hours to achieve mindfulness throughout the day. And then the next A is avoiding sugar, parabens, phthalates. I mean, phthalates is the number one produced chemical on the planet. And the US produces 1 billion pounds of it alone. And it's an endocrine disruptor and affects our homeostasis. So thinking about packaging, that's why Green Goo is in aluminum tins, which was really disruptive, 10 years ago. Of course, now we have aluminum cans for water, and we know that it's a renewable resource and it's not leaching some of these other, properties that could be dangerous. And then N is nutrition. So always thinking about nutrition, again, not just from what you're ingesting, but from your food source. And so that little acronym for us works really well to just be making quick decisions throughout the day, to be reminded of how you can contribute and avoid things that may not serve you well, in your overall health and wellness.
No, that's super. So when we're taking a look at the back of products, I think most of us know about parabens now, and those are pretty easy to spot. What's the other one that you mentioned? I think that's harder,
Phthalates.
isn't it? Phthalate.
And phthalates aren't going to be on your ingredients. So that's something you have to learn in terms of packaging, because that's where you're going to see most phthalates coming from. Obviously, there's fragrances, formaldehyde, parabens. To your point, we don't need parabens. They were great when the Industrial Revolution started and we had these big bottles of lotion that we needed to keep stable, but we now have Amazon and we have great transportation and good technology that we can make products that can get to people's doors. So you don't need these preservatives, and they're great natural preservatives. Rosemary is a wonderful one. Lavender, we think lavender is just really an aromatic herb, and actually it's a wonderful product stabilizer in terms of keeping it from growing any kind of bacteria. It's a wonderful antiseptic. Vitamin E oil. So there's alternatives that we can use, instead of having parabens. And obviously the same with fragrances, having pure essential oils versus fragrances. And now there's more call outs, but there's some great apps out there as well. My daughter's got a good one where you can just put it up to a label and it'll give you insight if it's like 0 to 100 from a cleanliness standpoint. And that's why it was important for us too with Green Goo. We registered with the FDA. We have our active ingredients, our inactive ingredients outlined. And you got to keep in mind, a lot of inactive ingredients are not required to be on the label. And that's something that we really would like to see change over time. And that's going to be consumers really coming to the table and saying, we want more disclosures.
Yeah. So are there any ingredients in particular that you want to shout out to people to watch out for when they're taking a look at the back of something
Oh my
that they might
goodness.
not? Right.
Where would you even begin? I would say from a sunscreen standpoint, oxybenzone, that is one that is pretty serious. I remember being in my organic chemistry class in my undergrad, and we were dissecting the sunscreen. And I raised my hand to the professor and I said, "This is a known carcinogen." He goes, "Yep." And I'm like, "Why are we putting this on our skin?" Well, it's the only thing we have to date that people are using in marketing consumer packaged good products that appear to have, the efficacy of deflecting the sun rays. I'm like, but what's the trade-off? you know, so our sunscreen only has 7 ingredients, and all of these plants have natural sun protection in them, along with the zinc oxide. But I also the challenge that I found in product developing a sunscreen was to reset the expectation that you think you can put something on your skin once and be in the sun for 12 hours. It's really not what we were meant to do. So it's great to buy you some time and protect you for, a few hours, but I really like use your sunscreen, cover up and take some sun breaks. And that's really what's best for your skin.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of those waterproof sunscreen type t-shirts.
Yes, truly,
You're not
truly.
ocean all day. Um, Gosh. Now, I think a lot of us kind of get roped into skincare and wrinkles, and there's so many that say it's doctor formulated or it's patent pending, or and you can't. You can process patent, but you can't necessarily formula patent things with plants in them. And so, how do we get to a point where we're actually helping people with some of these products? What's the best way that you have found to? I'm obviously you're sharing your messaging here with us today, but have you really found that some places are better to, kind of help educate than others? There's so much that is dangerous for us. And I think we've kind of gotten caught up in some of these um, approval processes, if you will, over the years, and what's safe and what isn't, and what's kind of safe. And I think it's really important for all of us to understand where and how we can take care of ourselves better.
And that's why I love that you have this podcast and you're sharing these messages out, because truly this is the best platform in terms of getting the education out there. Because consumers are so inundated with so many different ingredients and pretty products and flashy products. And greenwashing. There's so many times my daughter will pull a product up that she, put her app on and she's like, "Mom, this product looked like it's a natural product. And this got 2%, clean ingredients." So I think it really just takes time for the consumer to get to know it and make it equitable. That was important for us at Green Goo as well. When natural really first started to become available, it really was for the one percenters. And, there was a study that came out that said 90%, 97% of the consumers, if natural or organic was available and affordable, they would buy it. And that is overwhelming. So I think it's really important to normalize pricing to make it attainable for people. But I think it takes time, and it takes time on our own behalf, because how many times you just want to grab something on the shelf and just keep going? Who has time to read everything that's in front of us? But as you start down this holistic journey and you start feeling the effects, because you will feel the difference when you go down this journey, that then you become more like there's just more ownership in really wanting to filter out some of the junk.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, over to mindfulness. What are some of your favorite ways to kind of get centered, realigned? How do you teach a 12-year-old daughter how to do some of these things? Teenagers, I think, are difficult. They're open, but they're difficult. Any suggestions on that?
I always tell her, "Hear me now, believe me later." And gratitude is just a great one that we can all wrap our hands and hearts around. And so, oftentimes going to school, I'll say, "What are you grateful for? What intention do you want to set for the day?" And getting into, how can you impact someone else's life today, whether it's just being very conscious, like giving them eye contact and smiling, wishing them a good day. That's consciousness, that's presence. I personally love to watch the sun come up and the sun go down. And there's a lot of science behind how that impacts your metabolic activity. I mean, your circadian rhythm, but also, your serotonin and your dopamine, but being very intentional. So I probably say it too much, like, look at the sunrise. Let's just have a minute here. Let's look at the horizon. and, but intentional moments can be very much just like looking at a plant for, 10 seconds or, greeting someone. And so it's just those little things that make it easy to unpack throughout the day versus, having a 10-minute meditation practice. Now, I do find it very healthy throughout the day to take a minute where you just do some nice intentional breathing. You will be so surprised. Like, when you get, especially us moms, like we just get into this like go mode and you find yourself just on overdrive. Well, when you stop for a minute and just put your feet on the ground, stop moving, take a handful of deep breaths, it will really serve you well. And so you can take it in microcosms throughout the day and you'll feel the difference.
Super. How about with teenagers? Any particular words of advice on how to center them?
Yeah, I think the gratitude and the 5-10 seconds of a visual or deep breathing. And I find that my daughter, all of a sudden I'll look over because maybe she's doing her homework and she's being challenged by something and she's closing her eyes and taking a couple deep breaths. And so she's finding her center only because, I just kind of annoy her doing that, on a consistent basis. But then, we are very adaptable and humans, if it works and it serves you, you're going to do it again. And so you'll find that you'll do it again. And so will your adolescent. They might not want to do it in front of their friends because it's totally embarrassing, but
Or in front of their parents, because then their parents might say, well, you were right.
if only we taught emotional intelligence in grade school and junior high. That would be my dream, that we didn't have to wait until we were middle aged to develop emotional intelligence. It would be a beautiful gift to give to our, generations to come so that they can enjoy their lives even more fully and more intentionally. And I can only imagine what innovation would come from that.
Yeah, I always like to tell my son, he'll come in and I can tell he wants something. And I'll just say, read the room. Do you think you get what you want right now? He'll say no. And I said, okay, so pause and come back at me later.
There you go. Awareness. Yep. It can be a superpower.
So you also were involved in CBD. Do you have CBD in all of your products, some of your products?
We do not. So we have a different brand called Good Goo, and that has our hemp infused, lipid infused hemp in that product. And it's really cool to see how hemp, calms the endocannabinoid system and then really elevates the productivity of the other herbs. I will tell you, there's naturally occurring CBD in things and plants like echinacea, even black pepper, but it doesn't get the credit that, the hemp plant does. But the cannabinoid profile is phenomenal, along with having the terpenes and the chlorophyll that has other added benefits for skin and, again, that systemic balance.
Yeah, that's super. Now, when you feel like you're getting sick, do you have a go-to?
Do I have a go-to? Well,
Colds, viruses, allergies?
my Free to Breathe product is my favorite in the Green Goo world for my colds. It's a Vicks vapor alternative, but it also has antiviral properties to it and sleep properties. So I put that under my feet every night before I go to bed. Um, that's a good one for me. Mullein, in ingesting it, I tend to be very sensitive to, outdoor allergies and colds. And mullein, especially with the colds we've had over the last couple of years, that is a fantastic one for opening up your airways. And then holy basil is just incredibly calming. And so, sometimes that adaptogen, although you wouldn't think during cold and flu that would serve you as well, but it just seems to like calm everything so that your body can do the work that it needs to do to heal itself.
That's super. So, how do people find out more about you? Anything else I left out?
Greengoo.com. You can learn about our family, explore the products, and email anytime. And I'm happy to help create a customized holistic skincare approach.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.